And both the characters are brought in, always. In the first piece, what happened in the past? Last night, when he came, we spoke, we embraced, we did this. And you slip back into the present. So those ideas of time and spatial shifts is something that is very commonly and extensively used in the way we do the pieces. Now, of course, for now the situation in terms of the professional practice of Bharatanatyam in India has changed, hugely so. So for someone like me, I am actually playing these characters. I'm not being any of them. But we have to remember that the thing that makes them delightful is that these were real women who lived and breathed in the past. And I think I just also wanted to give you a little more of a flavor of the extent, the kind of absolutely wild and interesting lives these women lived. And it's also, I check myself when I say that, because for me it is interesting interesting because I think unfortunately that is not the norm today anymore. But these women lived as the norm, right, back then. So just to give you some examples also, there are many pieces which are really replete with very open expressions of sexuality. There's one very interesting piece. All the pieces now you heard were in the South Indian languages, but they're from all over the country. So you have one from the north, from Hindi, or a dialect of Hindi called Maithili, where the girl says, "Ki kahba sakhi raat ka baat, maanik padale kubani ka haat." So she tells her friend, she's like, "What can I tell you about last night? It was like a gem falling into the hands of a monkey." So this is in reference to her first sexual encounter with a boy or a man she's interested in. And the song unfolds like that. So it's a very sweet, light-hearted, humorous piece. There is also another one in Telugu which dates back almost probably early 1700s, where the woman says to the man, "Are you tired? Have you lost all your energy just for one time? Just one time of lovemaking and you're exhausted?" She's like, "What is this? I mean, I heard people say great things about you, but clearly not." Just an interesting aside to this, which I also think is very significant, is many of the names of the men who will feature in these songs will invariably be the names of deities, popular deities from within the Hindu pantheon. So this song that I just told you about, Okasarige, is set to Krishna, who is supposed to be the very charming, very like he's the playboy of the Indian mythology pantheon. So there is that. There is also one thing that I myself very recently discovered being performed by a descendant of one of these professional practicing communities, which was very interesting for me. Again in Telugu, and the first line says, "Cheduku maase yemi se tura." So she tells him, this man who's come to her house, says that it's that time of the month for me, I'm menstruating, so it's not the time for us to make love, go away. But she goes on to further poke him. So again, she's talking to Krishna, who's God Almighty. So she says, "Who set all these rules that we shouldn't be together now? You did it, so too bad for you, go back and come back 2 days later." Right? So just the sense of freedom, openness about their sexuality, owning of their choices is something I think this body of literature is very telling of. And I might add that it's probably a very unique body of literature anywhere in the world from any performing tradition with respect to this aspect. I just want to make 2 points to finish off this idea, this section. Both I think are very, really the crux of what I'm trying to communicate. Of course, what happened to these line of women is an important thing to understand. Unfortunate reality in the 1940s, when India was gaining independence from the colonial rule, a law or an act was brought in to abolish the practice of this dance form by the community of women. So not by the, so others were allowed to practice it now, which they never did earlier, but this community of women, their professional practice was declared as illegal. Why? I think the sense of what India, most of us in India grew up and live with today is very much a Victorian sense of morality. I think a false sense of morality, right? Of what is proper, what is not. And this was definitely something that seeped into our society very strongly when we were under the colonial rule. So these women were then considered socially unacceptable in some sense. How can a woman choose her own partner? Or how can she live without a partner? How can she raise her children on her own? I mean, these are arguments that are not unfamiliar to any of us today, right? But that is what was applied to this section of women to wipe out their community within decades. What existed, if you just look among the 3 pieces that I did today, one was written in the 1600s, one in the 1700s, one in the 1800s. Come 1900s, it took us 20 years to wipe them out instantly. Today you have no practicing dancers left anymore. And for the rest of the people like me, who are not who are not inducted into any kind of a cult, but who make a modern professional career choice to do this, I think it's extremely lucky that we have inherited this body of literature. And the point that I would like to make is that the existence of these women would have been known through documentation, but their voice, what they stood for, what they were like, how delightful, their lives were, the way they conducted their lives, we can only know through these surviving songs and through the fact that it has been passed on to the rest of us, and we are able to some percentage keep it alive. The fact is that we don't really have the entire body of the literature with us necessarily. It's only a fraction. So just that, yeah. So I think the stories basically speak also of a sexual morality and a female propriety far different from what we see today, right? And it is only because it is embodied in the performance that we're able to keep this idea and this story alive. So that's one important point. And the other very salient thing that I would like to say is from the technical side. Bharatanatyam dancers are actually not given tools to tell you how do you inhabit the character, right? We don't have techniques to say if you do this and that rules, right? There are no textbooks where we can look and say, okay, so that's how I play. This is the method to play a character. And the interesting thing is the way we understand the character is by literally playing inside that literature, but they're very short songs. That song contains all the information we need, and then by embodying it. So it is a question of a state of mind. It is a question of occupying a certain emotional and a mental space of these women, and you do it by speaking their language. The only way that I have learned to understand, find these characters is you say that first line over and over again in dance in many different ways, and you find the groove. You find that woman. You slip into her shoes, right? So this is a point I will come back to later as to why we have for both Giuditta and me, why Bharatanatyam and why this whole idea of addressing gender through Bharatanatyam. Because we have only spoken about the women voices here, yes, but it's not simple to inhabit that voice. How do you play a woman? Should I play a woman in terms of conventional body and physical mannerisms that today's society tells us, right? Or is there a mind space there? And every mind space is unique. You cannot replicate one with the other and just say, oh, women, oh, men, oh, X, Y, right? You have to find that person's mind space. So I'd like to finish the first section with these 2 points.